Hi, my name is Todd Leonard.
And my name is Herb Montgomery, and we're just talking.
Thumb, subscribe, bell. You see him, you know him, you love him, click him. Thanks.
Todd is verbose this week. So if you're new to this channel, each week Todd, Leonard, and I take a moment to talk about the upcoming weekend's lectionary readings from the Gospels. Our goal is to talk about those passages in the context of love, inclusion, and social justice. Our hope is that our conversation will be just talking, as in justice, but that also something we might say as we go back and forth would inspire you along with us to do more than just talking. So, Todd, what passage are we looking at this week?
Well, even though for those of us who are in the US, we are coming upon our Thanksgiving holiday, which we know obviously has a number of connotations and problematic connotations as well. From the lectionary standpoint, the lectionary is turning to the season of Advent. And the first week in Advent, we are looking at Luke chapter 21, verses 25 through 36.
And for those that, maybe you're new to Advent, Advent is not to be confused with Christmas. Advent precedes Christmas.
Yes, it
So,
is. It is a time of it is a reacquainting with our longing for God to appear, a longing for God's deliverance, a longing for liberation. It is it is a prophetic moment. It is an awakening to repentance, a calling back to being who God has called his people to be, a people of justice, a people of righteousness. And so it is a soul searching time really before uh, in the lectionary progression that that we can celebrate God's answer in the person and message of Jesus.
that's right. So, the various weekends of Advent, we focus on Advent itself means looking for an event, a looked for event, or a person that has arrived. The Advent, they have arrived. um and we take time to look at the arrival of um, hope and liberation in the past. We take time to look at it even in the first advent of Jesus. That's one weekend where we focus. And then we look at the hope of the Christian tradition throughout the last two millennia of the hope of the future, whatever that looks like. I know within Christianity there are various interpretations, but still a forward-looking hope for, as you said, Todd, justice, but a time when this world, the injustice, violence, and oppression of this world will be put right. So, again, what passage are we looking at?
We're in Luke 21, verses
Right.
25 through 36.
Did we cover that already? Did you say that? Did I miss it? I need
I
to pay
said it.
attention. You said it.
Yeah,
Okay. I need to pay
glad,
attention.
glad you're listening.
Yeah, yeah. All ears. My attention. It's right here. Right here. Focused. So
That's all right. You actually have to pay attention to what you're going to say because you have content that you need to present. So you're
that's
you're already you're trying to get ready with your content. So that's all right. We'll let
well.
it slide.
Speaking of content, I grapple with this passage this week. It's not an easy passage for me to deal with, just because of my own evolution in my own faith journey, my own
Mm,
deconstruction and reconstruction. Like, I still love Jesus, and I still very much care about justice and the world being put right. Um, but there's some stuff in this passage this week that's kind of triggers some old religious dysfunction.
mm,
There's the context is they've just the original intent of this passage. The context is that they've just finished talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, where the Jewish people in general Jewish Jesus followers, specifically in relation to our passage this week, have just had their world turned upside down. The Jerusalem, the temple there has been razed. Jerusalem has been burned, and their world has come to an end. What hope do they have left?
Yeah.
And they were looking forward to Jesus's return, and Jerusalem being the center out of which that justice and the promises of peace and justice and the end of oppression, all of that, like Isaiah says, coming out of Jerusalem. And instead they just watched Jerusalem almost be
Hmm.
wiped from the map. It wouldn't be till 135, but in 70 it came close. In 135 it's done all the way, and Jews are forbidden from ever entering into Jerusalem again. But that's still 100 years in the future, well, 70 years in the future. In 70, this is their since Jesus, their big world shattering catastrophe.
Yeah.
And this passage here is what the author of the Gospel of Luke wrote to try and bolster that fragile hope that they were still holding on to, talking about um, signs in the sun, moon, and stars, that there would be anguish, perplexity, the world would be like the tossing sea. And then it borrows this language, and I actually like this part. It borrows this language of the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And I think it's important to read that first, not as a Christian, but as a Jew.
Hmm.
And we read it as a Christian, and that language has been Christianized, and we all of a sudden think of second coming, Jesus coming back with the clouds, depending on what faith tradition you belong to.
Hmm.
Some are
Hmm.
little, some are literal, some are metaphorical. Some take it physical, some take it otherwise. But for a Jewish listener in the first century, they would have heard this language and immediately thought of a different event, which is an event where this language comes from, is an event in Daniel chapter 7, the apocalyptic book of Daniel, when the Son of Man and the Ancient of Days worked together to produce a kingdom on the earth, which Jesus preached about,
Hmm.
a kingdom on the earth which would signify the end of the various unjust and oppressive violent empires
Hmm.
under which they
Hmm.
were suffering. It would be that kingdom would be the end of those empires. The
Hmm.
judgment would cede and their dominion would be taken away, and a kingdom would be given to the people. This is all about stuff happening on a great reversal of
Hmm.
justice happening
Hmm.
here on earth. And then our passage this week moves to the fig tree. That, when you see the fig tree blooming, you know what season's at hand. The same thing is true of the kingdom. We're just watching the seasons change. Don't give up hope yet. And
Yeah.
then be careful that you don't get weighed down, that that it's still coming, it's still future, it's still happening. Um, and it ends with that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. And again, that Son of Man is not necessarily second coming language. It's Daniel chapter 7 language. It's
Hmm.
liberation and justice being established on the earth kind of language.
Hmm. So it does have that justice language to it. It frames this whole work of God and the deliverance that is being promised in the context of that prophetic Jewish tradition. And so it is a message of don't give up, justice is on the way. And I think
Right.
and I think and so to at least say let's be clear on what this is saying. This is not a cosmic removal. This is not talking of a cosmic removal of Earth's population from the Earth and taking people somewhere else. This is talking about um, a a godly intervention to right the world of its wrongs. So it will be
On
it
behalf of
is
those who are being harmed.
on the behalf of those being harmed. So it is another iteration of what people had hoped would happen when Jesus was here back in the 30s AD, is that this will be there's a hope of another coming of the Son of Man, that this time will get the job done, that the job he started back when he was here he will get the job done. And so it is speaking those words of hope to people who, if they had any knowledge of the Hebrew prophetic tradition, the temple and the Jerusalem are at the center of those prophetic traditions, that part of God restoring righteousness and holiness and justice in the world. You see the temple and the city of Jerusalem being places of justice and righteousness. And so to see the temple destroyed means prophecy, even
Game over.
game over, even though ultimately the point of those prophecies was not about the institution itself, the physical institution, but about justice reigning. For people, they had so equated those two things together that you say the temple's gone. How can you have those prophecies? It must mean we are far, far away from seeing justice fulfilled. And so, yeah, this is the Lucan community trying to hold out hope, desperately trying to hold up hope that something better is coming.
So when I lift this from that context, and all of that's really well said, Todd. I think you summed it up great. When I lift all of that from that context and I try to place it on our context today, where many of us have had we for a few short months had something to hope for. We had some hope and we had some excitement. We thought, oh, things are going to be different than what we expected. And, we did not, we knew it was possible. I don't know if there are any others out there like me. I knew what we're in right now was possible, but I really honestly thought there is no way the majority of the population is going to let this happen again. Right?
Right.
I had that hope. And yet, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And when I try to take the message, the general message of this week's passage and apply it to our situation today, what it says to me, what it reminds me of are certain phrases like the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we're in this time of kind of a gut punch. We thought things were going to go one way, but they went another. But it's not over. It's a lot harder for sure, but justice, the arc of the universe still bends towards justice. Justice is still coming. Hope is still coming. Future is still coming. And then I start having problems. When I try to apply all of that to now, I'm reminded of the critiques of folks like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who said, yeah, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, not inevitably, not automatically. It bends
Right.
towards justice if we choose to bend it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We have a choice to make. And I'm reminded of, and I was introduced to this phrase from by Alice Walker, but she took it from the poet June Jordan, the phrase that we are the ones we've been waiting for, that it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier to, yeah, look for some future hope and someone to come intervene, like you said, an intervention
Mm-hmm.
on our
Mm-hmm.
behalf to come and do it for us. But hero waiting and hero worship and hero longing hasn't always borne good fruit throughout history. We
Right.
don't, in other words, it's not a, we don't need to wait for saviors to show up in our society. We're the ones that need to be
Yeah.
making those choices. And when people did show up like that in the past, it wasn't because they were waiting for someone else to show up and do it for them. They said, if something's going to change, I'm going to have to do it.
That's right. That's right.
And so there's a little bit of tension this week for me with this passage that, how do we, and I don't know that we can square it, but it at least is tension there saying this passage is in the face of deep disappointment, deep loss of hope, trying to
Mm-hmm.
renew that hope and kind of breathe onto the coals, the small remaining coals of that hope to kind of blow it back into a flame.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that the same things that Luke, the author of Luke's gospel, the same tactics that Luke used for his audience would work for us in our context today. I don't know that we should be sitting back still hoping for someone to come and save us. You know what I mean? Or
And I
just
think,
trusting that the universe will eventually become just. I don't know that that's healthy.
and I think that's why it's so important how we look at the meaning of the Advent season, not just for the season itself, but because in reality we live in Advent. We are living between um, the the past actions of God and God's people, and uh, living yet to know what will happen in regards to what will God's people do, what will God do going forward. We live in that. We've known what's happened in the past. We don't know what's happening in the future. So what do we do with the unknown? And I think what you alluded to is the question of, do we sit back and wait for intervention,
Do we patiently endure?
or, and it's not a question, and but this is the issue that I would say, because I have so many friends and family, and there's so many people in our country who believe in the intervention of a return of Christ.
I
And
know.
I don't seek to dispel that from those.
As
You
long
and
as it's not making you passive today, I'm okay.
you and I are people who sense that maybe the second coming of Christ is more the revelation of Christ through his people working on earth and bringing about the justice of our own. I think you and I feel that that may be a more accurate or a more truthful manifestation of that. Um, but I think when you look at the Hebrew prophets and their calls to repentance, and you look at John the Baptist as the forerunner of Jesus, um, they did not preach a sit back and wait on your
Correct.
deliverance. They
Correct.
said, get busy and lead the way for your deliverer. You get ahead of him and you start doing the work
Yeah, I
of
love that.
caring for the poor, of lifting each other's burdens, of care, of liberating the oppressed. You get busy doing that work, so when he gets here, it's already started, and then you all just keep moving together as the deliverer comes in to continue that work. And so I think it's so crucial that we frame this is not a call to passive waiting for the deliverer to come in and rescue us. It's not just sitting in a lifeboat
Waiting on a son
waiting.
of man to come, according to this.
Correct. This is saying, because we know the deliverer is coming, because we know that God is still actively working towards justice, then get going on doing the work of justice, because we know that God has not stopped working himself. I
I
think
love that.
um, I saw a preacher just the other day, just a short clip of a preacher. I don't know where he's from, and I can't give him credit like I should be able to. But he was talking to a congregation that was made up primarily of people whose votes went towards the loser in the election, and he is trying to give them hope. And he says, "Is any of this a surprise to God? Is any of this Did any of this catch God off guard? Did any of this Does any of this have the potential to thwart God's plan? I mean, he spoke as a person who believes very much in the interventionary work of God. And he said, I want you to be very clear. God has not stopped doing a darn thing. He's still going. And and if he's still going, what are you and I going to do? We're going to keep going. Nothing's changed. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And I loved his perspective from somebody who very much still believes and preaches an interventionary work of God in the world. I think that's what we have to embrace, whether we believe in a second coming of a literal second coming of Jesus in some way, or whether we don't.
Yeah, there's so many. There's parts of what you just said that I'm like, yes, and that resonates. And then there's parts of what you just said that trigger more questions than answers.
Hmm.
For me. For me. Um, the part that I love next weekend's, not this coming, but the next weekend's lectionary reading is actually on John the Baptist, talking about that
Mm-hmm.
advent, the advent of
Mm-hmm.
John the Baptist in the wilderness. And now he was saying, it's coming, make the path smooth,
Mm-hmm.
clear out all the obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
do the preparatory work. And so that resonates deeply with me. I can look forward to a future hope if the call is to prepare the way for it now,
Yeah. Yeah.
do the preparatory work now. I love that. What raises more questions than answers is the passage in Isaiah 5 where Jesus says, I came to the vineyard expecting to find good grapes, but instead found sour ones. So that is one example, at least in the Hebrew prophets, where God was caught by surprise.
Uh, hmm.
And does God's plan, does it actually ever get thwarted?
Right.
You know what
And
I mean?
I am with you on that. I
And I know
completely
you are. I
agree.
know you are. I get
I
triggered
completely
when
agree
we
with
try
you.
to placate all worry and anxiety and fear because
Yeah.
sometimes worry, anxiety, and fear, no, the risk is real. And sometimes it's all going to be okay. In me, I'm not saying this is true for anyone else out there. It might be, but I'm not saying this is true for anyone else
Yeah.
out there who's a watcher or one of our listeners in our audience. But for me, that everything's going to be okay. This is still hasn't, you can just, all of that, it breeds passivity in me. I sit back and think, oh, you're
Yep.
right. What was I worried about? It's all going to be okay. When
Yeah.
instead, I think that anxiety, that fear sometimes can
Because
be healthy, and we need to channel it into, well, the stakes are high right now. Get off your
right.
butt and get
Right.
engaged.
Right. I think I think there's so much truth to that, and I think it's so it's. I think I understand again where that preacher was coming from because
Mhm.
everybody who voted for the winner was, on Wednesday after the election saying God is on his throne, God has worked, God is
Yeah.
clearly ruling and
Yeah.
doing because God's will was accomplished in the election. So for all the and for all the Christians who
Who
voted
voted
for
for
the other
Harris?
candidate,
Right.
they needed to be reminded that God was on the throne too. And so this preacher was reminding them that God was on the throne too for
Yeah.
those who
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
that kind of remembrance. But you're exactly right. And one of the things I'm learning in counseling, one of the forms of counseling that I've learned about is existentialist counseling. And they say that for the existentialist approach is that when anxiety arises in you, it's not necessarily always a bad thing to be anxious.
That's right.
That
I agree with that.
chronic anxiety that you're not
Sure.
able to deal with, that's a problem, and you need to seek psychiatric assistance, perhaps medication, things like that. But when you get anxiety is actually a call to you to say, all right, this life is tenuous. This life is unpredictable. You can't, there are not very many guarantees in this life. So, with what you have available to you, what resources you have, what power and capability you have, what will you do with your time and your talents and your resources to make meaning and purpose and good in this life? Because it actually does depend on you.
Mm. And that's why I love what Ta-Nehisi Coates says, that, yeah, the arc of the moral universe does eventually bend towards justice if we choose to bend it that way.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't automatically do that.
No.
And so,
And so
yeah,
sometimes strategic, sometimes again, you and I are not people who say what God's will is. We are not in that business.
yeah, yeah. I can tell
And
you what it isn't.
but there are we can see silver linings that develop in situations at times like this because of people who in their anxiety say, I will not let this pass.
That's
I
right.
will not I will not sit by and let this go unchallenged.
That's right.
And because of that, there are people who actually get more engaged in this time than they do when their team is winning,
Right.
and which is an interesting thing. And
And I'm
then
one of those. I'm one of those.
yeah, so there is an interesting paradox that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. I know not everyone's the same. And I have long since embraced the reality that not all preaching or teaching is for everyone. There are very few universal messages in the world, right?
Mm,
That certain people need to hear certain things at different times of their life. For me right now, I don't need to hear it's all going to be okay. You know what I mean? Because I
yeah,
don't believe it will be. I
right.
believe that there are significant threats out there.
Yeah.
And again, there's there's a spectrum here of what we can do about it. I don't want to overinflate the harm that is about to be done for people that are on this end of the spectrum over here, that there's precious little they can do about it. Because then you
Mm,
just have all that anxiety and no
mm-hmm,
way to healthfully channel that into making a difference. But
mm-hmm,
all of us are somewhere on that spectrum. And some of us are over here where we can't, there are things we can do. And there are people even beyond us in places of power and influence that can do way more than even we can. And I
yeah.
think what I'm feeling right now is, wherever you're at on that spectrum of being able to do something, do
Mm-hmm,
everything you possibly can right
yeah.
now, and
Yeah.
hope that there's someone further down the spectrum from you that can do even more than you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good.
Like, we are the
I
ones
think
we've
that's
been
right.
waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to this year. And again, and I don't want to offend anybody that's watching, but this year during Advent, I really don't want to hear about something else coming. I want to hear about how we can show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because the reality is that's what happens is when we show up, something else then does come.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There is, it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense. Is
It does.
it may not be a divine being coming out of the sky, but it may very well be a new movement of people. It may be a new. It could be a new political leader. It could be new. There could be a number of different things that could arise because of people like you and I in the grassroots that do our thing and mobilize in our local and our state to do what we need to do. And
Yes.
we make differences now that ultimately will pay off in something that will be a national level movement down the road, or even
Yeah.
international.
Yeah. And we call it preparing the way for what's coming. But at the same time, maybe in our preparation, we're actually setting motion the causes of what's
Right.
going to come and happen, the cause and
That's right.
effect, where we're thinking this is coming, I better prepare for it. And we don't realize that what we're actually doing is setting that in motion, that it wouldn't have
Right.
been in motion had we not got engaged.
And it's also good to to actually take a step back and look at historically where we are in some of these things and say, okay, look at where we are on the timeline and where we've come to, and to
Mhm.
say, look at what we have accomplished, not to say it's inevitable that justice will be accomplished, because
But a lot has.
at moments like this, we can see where it's being threatened in very significant ways. But we can also say, but look at in the in the trajectory of things, look where we are, and say, all right, so this is we are seeing major pushback right now, but this like we looked at just a couple weeks ago, that passage about these being the birth pangs of
Right, right.
something new. That was a similar passage in Matthew about
Yes, same
the
exact context.
justice coming. That these are birth pangs. This is that new life is actually can emerge from this if we keep pushing, to use contractual
Sure,
labor
sure. Push,
language, keep
push.
pushing, and take deep
Yeah,
breaths.
yeah,
So doing that as well can be helpful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. I just, yeah, I just, I don't
It's
want
like,
anything that's going to try and inspire us to sit back and do nothing right now. And you are so right, Todd. We have come so far and accomplished so much. The world that my kids are being raised in, the awareness that they're being
mhm,
raised with, the consciousness that they're being raised possessing of different communities and what
mhm.
communities different than them experience and the sensitivities they have, all of
Even
that.
your kids and what people would consider a backwater state, your kids in West
Appalachian, West
Virginia,
Virginia, exactly.
totally, totally, the generations are changing. I mean, and that's a
My daughter
powerful
just came
thing.
home from her women's genders and studies class and from her queer studies classes at university, and came home and said, Dad, you were onto something a few years ago. You were, where they, anyway. I'm not trying to. That was a cool moment for me when your kids say, "Hey, you
Thank
might have been
goodness she didn't
right.
come back and say, "Dad, you were so behind. You're so behind
You're
now
so
because I'm so
behind."
much more now. I'm
Right.
let me get you up to speed." I was hoping she was going
Oh,
to do
that's
that.
coming next holiday. That's coming Christmas. This is just Thanksgiving. This is
Oh,
still
okay.
mid semester. No, no. I wish that I would have been raised with this awareness, right? I wish
Yeah.
the world would
Right.
have been
Oh man.
like this back in our day,
Oh.
right?
Oh man.
All of that is true. Nonetheless, that is both things can also be true. We still have such a
It's a
long way to
threat.
go. We still have such a
Absolutely.
long way to go. And there's a
Absolutely.
side that feels threatened by how far we've come, and they want to push back and take us back.
Yes.
And right now is the time to keep
Absolutely.
pushing forward. Keep
That's
pushing.
right.
I like your language.
That's
Keep
right.
pushing.
Yep.
Push. Yeah,
Yep.
I like it. Yeah. If I had to preach on Advent this weekend, this would preach. This would give me something to
Mm-hmm.
talk about.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and again, I think this is where I had landed for the last few years, because I preached in a congregation that was very much a congregation that embraced a literal second coming of Christ. And so for me, as someone who's not so sure about that, um, I I I could lean into upholding my congregation's hope in that, and saying, but this is active work time. This is not sit on your ass time.
Yeah. Even if you
This
do
is
believe in a literal second coming, there's preparatory work to do.
this Advent time is get busy doing the work that God is going to be doing when God arrives. So
Right.
get busy doing that now. And I think
And
that's
however our secular audience wants to get there, as
right.
far as get around that language, the point
Feel
is
free.
don't wait. Yeah, feel free and don't wait for someone else to intervene. Get to work now. That's really the
Yep.
message.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man,
So,
got anything else for us, Todd? Dude, there's some good nuggets in there. I appreciate your wisdom this week.
yeah, wow, this is I love Advent. Advent for me is good stuff. As even with some of the passages that are a struggle. This passage makes me makes us struggle a little bit, but I love this getting getting in line with the prophets and with everybody who's saying let's get to work for the kingdom of God is coming. For me, this is
Yeah,
just that's like a heart. My heart beats with it. So this is good stuff.
I
But
love it.
yeah, I don't have anything else. You got anything else?
I don't, man. I don't.
Okay.
I'm going to chew on the stuff you've already placed out there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm got big news. Big news. Huge news. I got big news. Um,
Share it with us already, Todd. My anxiety levels are going up again.
um, as you know, I started my coaching online coaching business. Uh, I have my first client.
Oh,
So
awesome.
yeah, so I'm looking forward to starting that
Congratulations.
engagement. So yeah, I mean that, and ultimately, it's not about me. It's just I'm
No, but
really excited about the possibility of now being able to engage and work with somebody and do that journey together. So very excited
it
about that. And sorry, go ahead.
it's okay for the parts that are about you to be about you too. So congratulations on a success, the launch of a successful coaching business.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that. And if you or someone you know would benefit from doing some of that journey work and you want to do some existential questioning and work through some things past, present, and future together, be happy to do that. You can find my website, tjlcc.com. And what's happening with you, Dr. Herb?
I just want to thank everyone still for, especially during the close of the year. The close of the year is when Renewed Heart Ministries budget is usually met for the following year. And everyone that's stepping up right now, I just want to thank you so much for your support of Renewed Heart Ministries work. Many of you already know that all donations from now to the end of the year are being matched dollar for dollar, so your support can go twice as far. And if you would like to join them in supporting Renewed Heart Ministries, you can do that by going to renewedheartministries.com and clicking donate. And while you're there, just snoop around the website. There are so many resources there that help people of faith find the intersection of their faith and social justice engagement. There's so much there on that website. If you just start digging, there's just a ton of resources. So just take advantage of those. They're all free. And again, for those of you who are supporting our work, thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Well, I wish everybody a great week. It's an opportunity to be grateful. It's an opportunity to recognize that we get a lot of things wrong and we tell a lot of false stories about what who we are and what we're doing. And this is an opportunity this week to tell truthful stories about who we are, to repent of those stories, and to love each other and lean into that love more and more and do the work of justice. So I pray that that'll be true for you over this holiday and as we enter into the Advent season.
Absolutely. And also, pro tip I learned today, for those of you who are gathering with family this Thursday to eat a special meal, bring up politics. And
Yes.
and the reason is because you'll have to spend less on Christmas presents. That's your pro tip.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, it's economical.
Thank you, Herb.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
All right, folks.
Thanks for
With
watching,
that,
everybody.
have a great week.